Good evening and welcome to the Monday, April 6th Human Services meeting. I call the meeting to order. April 6th, right? May 4th. It would be helpful if I had the right agenda. Yeah, don't worry. Give me one more.
It does say.
Just reading what's in front of me, folks. That's all right. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, May 4th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, perfect. Public comments. I'm going to call your name in threes, and you have about 3 minutes to make your comments. Looks like we have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people signed up. First, Mr. Albert Gibbs. Oh, there he is. Speaking on a non-agenda item.
Good evening. My name is Albert Gibbs. I'm at 2225 Emerson, a lifelong Evanston resident. What I wanted to speak with briefly is about something that's been going on in my community, in my ward, next door to my church. My church is at 1815 Church Street. There is a building that's under renovation next door to it at 1817 Church Street. I think it's called the North Shore Construction Co-op of some sort. When I was last here with my group, the Citizens Network of Protection, we were speaking to wanting to see even-handedness go on in the Fifth Ward, in so much as the type of businesses we wanted to see come into the community. And it was presented in response, I guess the response to it, as I recall, was that we were here criticizing the city council about something. When we were asking for fair play, the previous guys that had it didn't seem to get fair treatment of the city working with it. And one of the aldermen, I recall saying here that this place was going to turn out to be the jewel of Church Street. And I find that kind of odd, this North Shore construction, because I'm a man of God. And my church next door, I think, is the jewel of the town. God's house is the jewel of the street, not people that move in to do business for profit. And then when I looked a little closer to what these people were doing in that building, because me and my church members, we could never get a handle on what was actually going on with this building. We know when they began construction, we had a bunch of mice and rodents invade our church. We took them to be holy mice. Maybe they wanted to get saved or something. So we began to do a lot of exterminating and things of that nature. We didn't want to cause problems, but the minister, I believe, may have brought it to their attention. I don't know if the North Shore Consortium brought it to the city's attention, but it's kind of rough when you're sitting there praying and you're listening to people praying, or you're having Bible study and a little mouse comes out and sits and looks at you. And you pat your foot and he sits there like, well, maybe he should pat his.
You're almost at 3 minutes, Mr. Gibbs.
I'm just about done, sir.
Thank you,
Give
sir.
me a moment. But then I look further and I recall someone in the city council here asking the North Shore Consortium, where did you find your members? In other words, let me get this straight. They had an agreement, I think, with the city for $200,000 and a loan, and they were to put in sweat equity and so on and so forth. And I saw in the round table where the contractors took outside jobs, which didn't allow them to put in their sweat equity in accordance to the agreement with the city and the getting that loan, as well as them supposed to be the tenant to house the place, work in there, and they rented out the second and third floor to someone called Supes, S-U-P-E-S, and another business. And I come to learn that Supis is under FBI investigation as well as a grand jury investigation. And I said, wow, I remember the alderman saying that this place was going to turn out to be the jewel of the neighborhood. Well, maybe the city council needs to look at what kind of rental agreement the North Shore Consortium came up, or the North Shore Co-op, Construction Co-op came up with these tenants, and how could they not know that the tenants are under federal investigation and things of that nature? So my concern again is, as a person who was born and raised from a small little kid to 63 years old now, to say things are being placed in my neighborhood that are supposed to be for the betterment of me and my community, and I'm seeing law enforcement, things that break the law. I mean, what's going on here? Why doesn't the city know what's happening with that place and with those people? That they're under federal indictment, I guess it is, or they're being investigated to be indicted. You know, they don't come up with an FBI investigation as well as a grand jury investigation. They don't come up with all of that for nothing. I don't think it's nothing. I'll get out of the way. But I did want it to be known that I think the city council needs to look into what kind of rental agreement that the North Shore Co-op, Construction Co-op has with Supis, and the rest of them that you guys, city council, turned around and gave them an extension and more money to do what? To be the criminal jewel of my block where God's house is? Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. Next speaker, Suzanne Trout.
Hello. I'm here in support of SAFE, who's on the agenda. We recommend them as the best choice for continued management of services of the Evanston Animal Shelter. My knowledge and appreciation of this organization comes from my time there as a volunteer, and also as an organizer of a previous establishment for a nonprofit shelter I worked at Las Vegas. SAFE has established a very clear mission about providing short-term quality care and finding long-term loving homes for the abandoned animals of this community. There's clear leadership established in all areas, including care and placement, and for the overall operation. As you know, communication is really paramount in a volunteer organization, and they have established clear protocols for all areas. And in particular, I have been really impressed at the individual attention that they give each animal in their service, from fostering to training to special needs. They've demonstrated a commitment to every animal and every volunteer. As you can see, we have a lot of passionate volunteers here this evening. And I think the metrics of the shelter really speak for them favorably. They have a very high save rate, a very high successful placement rate, and this really rivals any that I've seen in both the region and nationally. So we thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Hachman Thus. You want to pass? Okay. Thank you, sir. Okay. You have 3 minutes.
It's Thomas.
Oh.
It's just an abbreviation, sorry. I'm not here as an affiliate of an organization. I'm here strictly as an advocate for animals, pets. If you are here with personal baggage, an agenda, the animals lose. If it's only money, the animals lose. If you're here to make a decision strictly based on politics, the animals lose. Having had mostly dogs most of my life, I know the therapeutic benefit I could talk on and on about my personally realized benefit stemming from these relationships. The upshot being the benefits of having pets is doubtless proven with science. Dogs and cats have evolved. The other day on the news, there was a story. Dogs have developed an understanding, a need even, one that is counter to the instincts of their wild cousins. Eye contact with a wild animal is a challenge to their dominance, their territory. Dogs have evolved such that they depend on eye contact. They haven't simply hung around us for a food-driven symbiosis. Dogs and cats are our closest companions. Genetically, they trust us. They need us too. Behaviors and instincts, I could talk on about that too. The needs trust of the people of Evanston manifest here. Love isn't in a contract, passion, demonstrated through drive, understanding, and commitment isn't a legislatable condition. If in this room there is a question of the commitment, talent, passion demonstrated by those in place these last few months or year, however long it's been, I've missed it. I recommend you take any such doubt very seriously. I also recommend that you take a moment, stop in, have a look, have a talk, do a volunteer shift, even recommend you stop in and unannounced if that floats your boat. If we're here for politics, personal agenda, the animals lose. The shelter loses. The people of Evanston lose. Thanks.
Thank you. Lori Osborne.
Good evening. My name is Lori Osborne. I am an Evanston resident and have been a volunteer with the Evanston Animal Shelter since December. I cannot speak highly enough about the current shelter management and volunteers. The welfare of the animals is first and foremost, and the results speak for themselves with our outstanding placement rate. Make no mistake, the shelter can be a terrifying place for the dogs and cats who find themselves there through no fault of their own. In addition to standard care and feeding, we put tremendous effort into tending to our guests' medical and emotional needs, ensuring they receive love and socialization during their stay with us. During my brief tenure, I have seen our dog and cat whisperers work their magic on the toughest of cases. Several volunteers also foster shelter dogs and cats who need more TLC than we can provide in a shelter setting. I'm currently fostering one of our cats named Applesauce, who is thought to have had a stroke but fortunately did not and is on the mend. And this is Applesauce. Super cute. Given all that the current team has achieved, I hope you will select SAFE to run the shelter. Creating the only no-kill municipal shelter in Cook County is an accomplishment to be proud of, and even more so because it is homegrown. Thank you.
Thank you. Maggie? Okay, thank you. Casey Johnson?
Good evening. I'm Casey Johnson. I've been living in Evanston since September and volunteering since then as well. I'm speaking on in support of SAFE as well. So I've been volunteering at the animal shelter since September. And in that time, the SAFE leadership have ensured that every volunteer was supported, engaged, safe, and having fun. They've further ensured that the animals in our care are given the very best shot they can have. Animals that might otherwise get passed over or euthanized have been cared for, protected, and kept as safe as possible from harm and fear. One such dog was my foster dog, Buddy. Buddy came to the shelter in December, having been found in the Evanston lakefront. He was stiff and cold and terrified and in pain, and he was about 14 years old. So Buddy was not, at first glance, a very adoptable dog. But the SAFE leadership didn't just take one glance at Buddy. They took a second and a third glance. And when he was warm and combed and his belly was full and he was finally given some medical treatment, he began to mend and he began to connect with people. But that wasn't all that they did. They also sought me out and asked me to take Buddy into my home, which I did. When he first came home, we didn't know if he was there for hospice or to recover, But we were so thrilled when he opened up even more. He started running around, playing in the January snow. And this was from a dog who could barely walk when he came into the shelter. Buddy has since been adopted. The leadership at SAFE put us on the radio, and we found that Buddy was featured as the pet of the week, and we found a home for him. He went home, he lives with a wonderful couple, and they can take him outside and play with him because the SAFE leadership gave him a chance. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Miss Emma Smith.
And my name is Emma Smith, and I live in the 8th Ward. I began volunteering at the Evanston Animal Shelter a little over a year ago. Elisa Kaplan and Vicky Pasenko were my two supervisors, and though I began volunteering with dog handling experience, I had no shelter experience. Not only did they prepare me and all volunteers to run our shift highly effectively, their knowledge and ability to run our shift made me want to participate as much as I could in shelter activities. On May 9, 2014, the City of Evanston severed ties with the organization that had been running the shelter. When that organization left, the shelter was thrown into a state of flux. Thanks to the competency and ability of the women who developed Saving Animals for Evanston, also known as SAFE, Evanston received the organization that perfectly fit its needs, and I got my chance to become more involved in the shelter. I'm now a kennel captain for the Tuesday evening dog shift and an adoption counselor. I routinely get messages from families who adopted a dog from the shelter that is run by Lisa and Vicky and SAFE, and they are so grateful for their experience. Each family has a dog that fits their family perfectly, thanks to clear and appropriate information that is provided to all volunteers under the Evanston Animal Shelter's current leadership. Evanston is unlike any city in the U.S. I was born and raised here, and after many years away, I'm back because of this fact. We deserve a shelter that fits a unique population, human, canine, and feline. Families and individuals who come in for pets they love can connect with their local shelter, run by volunteers who identify as being one of a kind. If any of the volunteers have questions or suggestions, they feel free to address concerns knowing that they are part of the organization. The Evanston Animal Shelter is saving animals for Evanston in every way. Evanston's pets and people deserve to have it be that in name as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Our first item for consideration, is anyone else? Okay, good. Our first item for consideration is HAS1, Homeless Management Information Systems. Do you have
Move approval.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Are there any, seeing no lights? Alderman Miller.
Is there a representative of the Alliance here by any chance?
We have staff here.
Of staff?
We have staff.
You want to,
Two quick questions. Do you have, I understand the counts going on right now as we speak of the homeless population in Evanston. Do you have a preliminary estimate of chronically homeless or homeless veterans under the count?
I do not have that at this time. I can get back to you though with
That'd
that.
be great. And then as far as, I looked at the Alliance, they have the Zero 2016 plan in terms of limiting homelessness. Are we seeing in Evanston, any participants in the program?
I can get you the details on that too. It's a very exciting and new initiative. They're focusing on veterans first, and then we'll be moving to chronically homeless individuals and families.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Great.
All right. Thank you. Are there any other questions? It's been moved and seconded to receive the report. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll keep moving on. Item HH2, the handyman program. Staff is recommending City Council's approval for a grant not to exceed $25,000 from the city's Affordable Housing Fund.
I move approval.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? I have a quick question for staff. Thank you. So, 2014, we only spent $10,000?
Yes, that's correct.
Why do I feel like, Alderman Holmes, that there's always been a long waiting
We do-
list for
and
that?
there still is a
there's
long waiting list.
Can you just kind of give us an update on where we are currently with our waiting list? And it just seems like a really small number, and if I
Yeah.
remember correctly, it was either last year or the year before, we were asking for $50,000, and that didn't seem like enough.
Yes.
So we're capping it at 25 now.
Yes. So historically, this program is run out of the Levy Center with Audrey Thompson down there.
Right.
So she has all the program information. The request for this was mostly just to move it from the funding source from CDBG
Okay.
over to the Affordable Housing Fund. So I'm happy to get you kind of the program policies and procedures about why there would be a waiting list and we're looking at really small grants, $200, $300 per household at a time.
And we have our city manager. Alderman Grover, I see your light.
My question is really, if we're not just moving this for 1 year from CDBG to the Affordable Housing Fund, I'm assuming it's going to be a standing budget item for affordable housing?
That's
From our
plan.
Affordable
That's
Housing
correct.
Fund, so.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I think one of the challenges we've had, and certainly we can have Ms. Thompson provide some additional information, is there's been a staffing issue with that. And so I think just in the recent past, we've been able to get that resolved, and we're moving forward and doing more. So it's one of those things where we probably will never have enough money to do that. I think it's a matter of finding the appropriate funding source. I think this adjustment will help with that, and we'd be happy to come back. But I think there has been a staffing issue over the last 18, 24 months, which has since been resolved.
Yeah.
And not only that, the other issue around that is that a lot of times when they get in, they find out that it's not really a handyman issue. There are so many other needs, especially with the seniors. So that's also. But the list is still there, Alderman.
Okay. Is it possible, city manager, to have her come to our next meeting and give us an update on where we are with that and answer questions? Thank you very much.
We'll ask Deputy Manager Storley to make that request.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions before we, it's perfect. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. HH3, police complaints.
Move to accept the police complaint report for this month.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying, I guess we're just receiving it. I don't have to vote on it. All right, next. Item HH4, the agreement with SAFE Evanston.
No, I think we have to vote on it, don't we?
No, there's just we'll receive it.
To accept it.
Yeah.
It's for action.
Yeah, for action, we'll accept it. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Item HH4, agreement with SAFE Evanston Animal Shelter. We have our city manager. Do you want to move it, or do you?
Move approval. Second.
Perfect. It's been moved and seconded. City manager.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we're here this evening to give you a little update as to the work that has been done since your last meeting on April 6th. The recommended action is to authorize me to negotiate a 2-year agreement with SAFE, Evanston Animal Shelter Association, to operate the Evanston Animal Shelter and return to the full council on May 26 for review and approval of the agreement. In addition, to authorize me to continue discussions with the Anti-Cruelty Society and Treehouse Humane Society to develop closer ties to support Evanston animals. At your last meeting, you asked that I meet with SAFE to negotiate an agreement, as well as to reach out to Anti-Cruelty and Treehouse. I have done all of those things. You'll see in the memorandum, starting on page 82, proposing a 2-year agreement with SAFE that they be responsible for coordinating volunteer and adoption programs, coordinating and funding medical and behavioral care, and providing special food supplies. The city would be responsible for registration of all volunteers, the building maintenance, utilities, and some other support services. In the discussions with SAFE, they identified 2 issues regarding capital improvements, and so this agreement agrees that a brick shed that's adjacent to the building would be renovated into a dog behavior evaluation facility by October 1st at a cost to the city not to exceed $20,000, and that we would work with SAFE to procure a new storage shed. On the issue of budget and fundraising, the city would continue to fund all operations of the animal shelter until October 1st, 2015. The SAFE would begin receiving adoption revenue fees at the beginning of this agreement on June 1, and then on October 1, SAFE will fund all operations assigned to it. That SAFE be designated to raise funds for the operation of the animal shelter. No capital dollars would be authorized for fundraising, just for operation. That they be obligated to raise $40,000 a year in donations for operations of the shelter, and that all funds raised by SAFE under this agreement revert to the city of Evanston if an agreement is terminated. There's a attachment from the organization which asks for some additional additional questions that were raised at your last committee meeting. Included in the letter is SAFE's intention to reorganize under the name Evanston Animal Shelter Association. In my discussions with them, they felt it was very important that they be viewed as an organization solely for the support of the Evanston Animal Shelter, and felt that a name change would provide that. In addition, I also met with representatives of both the Anti-Cruelty Society and the Treehouse Humane Society. Treehouse's executive director, sitting in the back, is here and would be happy to answer any questions. But very good discussions with both organizations. I think that it makes sense to move forward with SAFE as outlined, but I think both that Anti-Cruelty and Treehouse have programs and opportunities for Evanston that we need to pursue. Anti-Cruelty offers a whole variety of training programs. Treehouse, as we've already been working with as far as providing some medical procedures for cats, as well as helping us with hoarding and some other programs. So I would ask for authorization to continue to work with both of those organizations to see what makes sense. The organization SAFE, Evanston Animal Shelter Association, I think is in a position to move forward. I think a 2-year agreement makes sense. We would review the agreement after the first year to make sure that things are on track. As some of the speakers mentioned this evening, this has been a couple of years in the making. I think Mr. Chair, members of the committee, that with SAFE we have the partner that we were looking for. I think it will take all of us working together in order to make the operation successful, but clearly it's already been a success with the number of animals that have found homes rather than finding other fates for them. So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my recommendation is the recommended action, and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, since we have a couple of lights, Alderman Miller.
So I recognize I've only been in this for about 2 hours, and I don't want to impede progress. I would like that the budget and fundraising timeline and plan to be fleshed out. I don't know if there's any representatives with SAFE here that could speak to this. There's presidents, there's co-presidents, I understand, the organization. So, for example, projected adoption fees are $30,000, and I'm wondering, where did that number come from? Do you have statistics from the previous year where you've been operating? It's, again, I understand it's a flow with you take what you can get, but I'd like to see just kind of these numbers fleshed out more. Can anyone?
Yeah, both the fundraising and the mostly the budget numbers came from looking at several years' previous budgets at the shelter and increasing some and decreasing others. So we significantly increased costs for veterinary expenses, which we expect to increase both because we're saving more animals and because we're improving care. And we decreased costs for things like printing and postage, which were very high under the previous VAO. In terms of adoption fees, we extrapolated those from the number that the amounts that had been received in previous years and incorporated the adoption fee raise, which happened about a year and a half ago. So it was a pretty easy calculation as far as adoption fees, just based on past history and then incorporating the increase that happened in, I think it was late 2013.
So here's my request, because this is going to come back to us for approval in a couple of weeks. If you could flesh out these numbers in terms of what was spent in previous years, if you have the numbers in a sense, and look at numbers in terms of again, I understand it's you take what animals come in, but I'd like to see more than just a flat line where these numbers actually came from, to ensure that there is that the projections that you have are actually feasible and based in what you're seeing.
So you want us to take numbers from previous budgets and put them there? So
right. With costs and everything of that sort. So, for example, another thing. So expenses, veterinary and behavioral care. What is that based on? I understand. Break it down into vaccinations, et cetera, et cetera. It's the round numbers kind of don't give it a clear picture of what actually probably is going to happen in the next year. I just want to make sure that the revenue plan can actually meet the projected expenses as well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to just make sure that the proposed agreement has insurance coverage incorporated into it, one of our standard kind of contractor agreements, Mr. Bobkowitz. Am I right? Whatever the standard provisions are for.
And Madam, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Alderman Grover, absolutely. And there is money in the budget to cover the insurance that was held previously by CARE. And so one of the reasons I'm just asking for deal points tonight is so that we can work out that language and make sure that it's acceptable to you. We'll see that at the end of the month.
Great. Great, thank you. I have to say that the animals in our shelter have been and will be in good hands with SAFE, soon to be known as the Evanston Animal Shelter Association. So I'm assuming that the contract that comes back to us in 2 weeks doesn't refer to SAFE, rather refers to the EASA or whatever.
It may have as a DBA, because I think one of the issues is you'll see in the attachment,
right.
that they've already incorporated under SAFE. And so we'll work through that with the law department.
Okay. That's
as we
pretty
bring
easy.
the docu back.
And I do think that SAFE, or the Evanston Animal Shelter Association, has really untapped fundraising potential. They've had their hands tied for the better part of the last year, and I'm thinking it's all upside for us at this point. So this is my opportunity to thank all the many volunteers who have been taking care of the animals at the shelter, and the members of the Animal Control Board, some of whom are here tonight, who saw us through this process. So thank you for every minute of TLC to our animals and every single loving gesture that you've offered our animals over the better part of the last year, and thank you for such a smooth transition. I know it didn't feel that way, but we're there now. So thank you, thank you.
Alderman Fisk?
Thank you. Is that Dave DeFoniak back there?
I'm sorry. You know what? Do you mind if Alderman Holmes? That was my mistake. I saw
Oh,
your
no, that's
light.
okay.
And then
Sure.
followed by Fisk Tandem. Thank you.
I just simply wanted to ask the city manager if you could forward to Alderman Miller some of the background information, because we have some of the information he's asking for, we have received before, and that would be helpful to you, I think, in terms of really then asking them to do that.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank
That
you.
was all.
Thank you.
Okay, my
Yes,
turn? Okay.
please.
Dave, if that's you back there, could you just come forward for just a second? Would you mind? This is Dave DeFuniak from Treehouse Humane Society, and on behalf of the Evanston City Council, and I'm sure the folks at SAFE, we want to thank you not only for responding to our RFP, but continuing to partner with the City of Evanston. You've done an incredible job for us in the past, and we're going to rely on you as well in the future. For those of you who don't know, Treehouse has stepped up in some of the most desperate cases that we've ever had in Evanston. I mean, especially with hoarding cases, where it's hard to find advocates for feral cats, but Treehouse does a good job of that, and I'm sure that the folks at the shelter are going to want to expand and do trap, neuter, return programs, and which I don't think there's anyone better than Treehouse Humane Society to provide education and support for that. For my colleagues on the committee, if you aren't aware, we've just had another large cat hoarding situation, but before that, we had one in the 4th Ward, and that I personally participated in. And Treehouse sent out a very amazing person who ended up, we had to go into the house basically wearing hazmat suits, and it was awful. And we were able to save the cats, unfortunately, not all of them, but that's the level of service that Treehouse has provided to us, where our shelter just couldn't accommodate it. So you are close to our hearts, and we're looking forward to working closely with you and having you actually come closer to Evanston. So that would be great. So thank you, Dave, and Jenny, and everyone else, Steve, and everyone else who met with the city manager. We really appreciate your partnership, and that you're there for especially our cats. So thank you. Now, I want to make a couple of comments about the proposal that's on the table for us tonight. Mr. City Manager, I'd like to make sure that anyone who has fostered an animal and who has outstanding expenses, that they're reimbursed for those expenses. And I hope the city budget can provide for that.
I would just ask that you make that as part of the motion.
Okay, so I would like to add that as part of the motion, so we can get information from SAFE as to who might be in that group and the amount of money that's concerned. As far as helping at the shelter, I think I've got some help for a shed to be donated, and also a little bit of work on the brick shed, the brick, whatever outbuilding we're calling that. Attached to our packet tonight was information that there is money that we have received from CARE in an amount of, I believe, $29,000. I would also like to attach to our motion that we apply that money toward the improvement of the brick shed at the shelter, that we get some roof windows in there that actually open and bring in fresh air and insulation and all those other nice things that we need in that to make that a really nice place for the animals. This is an effort that has been going on now for, gosh, Alderman Tendam, how many years? We've aged. I mean, we've aged over this. But it's been going on for a long time. And for everyone who's been involved in this, I know it's been a really tough road with ups and downs, but I think we've landed in the right place. I appreciate the fact that we asked questions last time, and Alderman Miller, thank you for asking the question again that we asked last time, and that's really important to have that information. But thank you for coming back and responding to those questions in a professional way. It's really important that we do that, so that we get it right. I've always had confidence that SAFE folks could do a great job. Their heart's in the right place. They're experienced, and they have the trust of the volunteers, and that's extremely important to making an effort like this a success. So, Mr. City Manager, I think we probably are pretty much in agreement that we're in the right place, and this is the right direction for us to go in.
Thank you, Alderman Fisk. Alderman Tendam.
Thank you. I agree with some of the amendments that Alderman Fisk made as far as reimbursement and improving the facility with the money we received from CARE. I think it's very important. It's a good step forward. I am pleased with the work of the last month. I'm completely on board with everything, and would offer my services if you'd like to help fundraise. So I look forward to working with you.
Doesn't get any better than that. Before we take this action, there have been a couple of amendments to the motion, so I want to make sure that they're properly read. Before you get started, Alderman Fish, just a couple of quick words. Oh, you have it in there.
There were capital improvement items that she mentioned, and that's what it says in the memo, that they will be used for capital improvement.
No, but she also wanted to add the expenses to the animals, and
But
also...
not with that $29,000, that can't happen.
No, we're talking...
Reimburse
that's why I
foster
asked,
families their documented
right,
expenses.
that's why I want to make sure that we read it as she stated, Alderman Holmes. Do we have any ideas what that outstanding amount is from SAFE, just a ballpark figure?
The reimbursements?
The
for
reimbursement,
foster-
just to get an idea of what that number looks like.
No.
We don't? Okay. That's all right. Okay.
Yeah, we only received one memo. We had one memo that, at least I did, and I'm sure everybody else received it. We only received one email from someone who was asking for reimbursement. I don't remember the amount in there, but there was an amount in that email that came out to us. I've not seen anything else.
And I think the concern that grew out of that was that she was asking for reimbursement, but said she didn't expect she'd ever get it. And
Right,
I just,
right.
and she was a student, and I just think anyone who's put money out
Absolutely.
privately, except for me, I'll eliminate myself, but anyone who's put money out while they're serving as a foster family for an Evanston Animal Shelter animal deserves our city support for that.
Yeah, we'll work with the SAFE Board and get an answer.
That sounds great. Before Alderman Tendrell, again, and I think it's been said, I want to quickly acknowledge all the volunteers who've been here time and time again, working working with us through this process. And it's nice to see a room full of, I think, happy faces. I see a couple. Okay, there we go. Now there's a room full of happy faces. And then also acknowledge our staff who's worked really, really hard. I mean, I know that Commander Pickett has worked with you very closely. Also, Deputy Chief Barnes has worked with you very closely. And then there have been members of this committee who rolled up their sleeves to get involved as well. Alderman Fisk, Alderman Grover, Alderman Tendem. So, Alderman Tendem, did you want to make comments before we call this to?
Just one comment. I think that henceforth, I think expenses incurred by Foster and other people should come through, should have direction from SAFE, just so we know what, I mean, you are in charge of the budget, and, you know, that,
I have one more question.
Alderman Fisk.
Mr. City Manager, I'm assuming that the reimbursements will come through Human Services as a agenda item for approval?
No, AP&W.
AP&W?
I was, it really is up to you all. I was just going
Depends
to
if they
package
stay in the
all
police
this.
department.
I was just going to package all this up and have it on the council agenda at the end of May. If you would prefer, we can separate them, and I can bring this back in June.
No, what my question was in the future for reimbursement for foster families, is that going to come through Police Department and Human Services, or is that going to go to AMPW?
That would go through the organization if it's in the
Right. No,
future.
the city would have no role in that.
Okay, so the SAFE people would pay all reimbursements for foster. Okay.
Alderman Grover.
And as part of that, I think I would like a clear policy on what the reimbursements are and what they're for, so that there are clear expectations
Sure.
about what are reimbursable expenses and what the documentation has to be.
Well, I'm assuming that whatever a person was fostering, that the medical care had been pre-approved by the SAFE folks.
I did not get that impression from the emails, so I don't, I think we'd leave that to SAFE. They will
come up with a policy.
I'll send you the
There's
email,
probably a
but I
policy in
think you'll
place.
be in charge of the parameters that are acceptable for reimbursement.
Pretty hard to micromanage.
Yeah. All right. So staff is recommending the City Council receive the report, authorize City Manager to negotiate the 2-year agreement with SAFE. What else? And then authorize City Manager to continue discussions with the Anti-Cruelty Society and Treehouse Humane Society to develop a closer ties to support the animals. And then we're tagging on to reimburse the volunteers for their expenses. Is that?
And the care money for the improvement of
And the care money for improvements.
Yep.
Are we good? Is everyone clear?
Yep.
All right. We'll call to question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
And can we remind the care and the SAFE people that there's 6 of us up here, so when it comes to council, there's 6. You heard all ayes, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just so you'll remember.
That's right. Again, congratulations, and thank you all very much for all your time and energy towards this issue. All right? Have a wonderful evening. Are there any items for discussion? Okay, seeing none. Any items for communication, staff, members of the committee? Is there a motion to adjourn? All right, it's been properly moved. All those in favor? Our meeting is adjourned.